Intro. Obsession is a movie about Bear cracking the One-Wish Willow to get his true love, but that decision is kinda questionable. That and the way he handles what happens to Nikki afterwards are both the things that the movie showcases that he's kind of the true villain in the end. He acts really like a victim throughout the movie, but in reality, he is kind of the bad guy here. But first, we should talk about the story, so we're basically all on the same page about what happens in the movie. We start off with Bear, who works at a music store with Nikki, Ian, and Sarah. Bear has a crush on Nikki, but doesn't really want to confess to her. He goes home and finds his cat Sandy dead. But later on, while gift shopping, Bear finds the One-Wish Willow and decides to get that for Nikki. Later, after fumbling Nikki one night, Bear gets upset and he says he wishes she would love him more than anyone in the world. Nikki then comes out and wants to sleep at Bear's place because her dad is dying of cancer. She does that, but in the morning, she makes a memorial with Sandy's remains, but also claims she's acting the way she is because of ecstasy. She's acting a bit weird, a bit funky, as you would say. But that's like a whelp moment. Well, that's a good enough time to start a relationship with her. Ian tells Bear that Nikki saw him as only a brother, and Bear's like, good one, bro, thinking it's like a prank, basically. Then Bear catches Nikki watching him in his sleep, and she claims he doesn't love her. And she screams this. And I mean, she screams this. Then she makes Bear a sandwich with Sandy's remains, which causes him to, freak out as anybody would. But he calls the One-Wish Willow company to try the trick of altering the wish. But that doesn't work. It only ends when either Bear or Nikki dies. He then hears the real Nikki scream on the telephone line through something from another place. Then they go to a party with friends where they play drinking Jenga. But what it is it's essentially just truth or dare. During the game, Nikki just goes on a yap session. We'll keep it brief. That's just a yap session about her violent version of Hansel and Gretel. But Bear grabs a brick and he flips it over and it says he has to kiss the person on his left. Let me tell you one thing. This sends Nikki basically into shock. Possibly, if this could have hit her harder, she would have went into a coma because of this. It just sends her crazy. Nikki goes over, she walks over to where Sarah is and moves her away from Bear's left and then places herself there. Nikki then screams before stabbing herself with a broken beer bottle, just as you do. That causes her and Bear to go home where she just threatens like suicide. Non-toxic behaviors at all. These are totally fine behavior. But Sarah tells Bear to meet her in the park, and just as he's about to head out the door, the real Nikki starts to speak to him through the body. She tells him to kill her, and he's like, no, I won't. I can't believe you would say that. I can't believe you would even say that. And then he leaves like a chud. He meets up with Sarah, and she tells him how Ian and Nikki have kind of been casually hooking up for 2 years, and she hints at her own possible, which is not just possible, it's an actual crush on Bear. They almost kiss, but Nikki comes in and kills Sarah with a brick in her car and tells Bear to wait while she gets rid of the body. Bear buys the last One-Wish Willows and tries to use them, but he can't. He tries and he tries, he just can't break them. So he tries to get Ian to cancel his wish, but instead, Ian wishes for $1 billion. Then he tries to get Nikki to cancel the wish, but then she threatens him and her with a gun while having Sarah's body in the room. Ian comes in and then is shot by Nikki, and then Bear locks himself in the bathroom. He tries to overdose on oxycodone in the bathroom and then changes his mind last minute and tries to vomit them up. He walks out of the bathroom as he's under the wish of Nikki now, and then he kisses her, but then he dies. He's gone. Nikki is about to die herself, but then the real Nikki comes back and screams in shock. Then after Nikki runs out of the room, the credits roll, and the movie is over after that. So here is the main thing about Bear. He had, and I mean had, a lot of opportunities to take back his wish or at least go with an alternative scenario for his wish. But he didn't. He could have handled it a lot better. He just was kind of a greedy person throughout the movie who he really only cared about himself. Now, I know from looking online and all that a lot of people would be like, I want a girl just like Nikki. I want a girl just like Nikki. These people will scream it because that's what happens when people are lonely. The people kind of like Bear who just want certainty. But there is a difference between like having an idea of Nikki and having an actual girl like Nikki. Because in the movie, Bear basically keeps Nikki trapped. Let's take, for example, the scene where the real Nikki wakes up while Bear is about to leave for the park to meet up with Sarah. Nikki, the real Nikki, she's like, please, Bear, I don't want myself to live like this. And Bear actually gets offended by this. He does. He's like, why would you even say that? True sociopath stunt. Because here's the thing. Bear gets offended because he thinks Nikki would rather die than be with him. Which just isn't even the case, by the way. It's just not even what it is. It's just not, he just doesn't even see it from her perspective at all. Not one little bit. It's just all about him. It just shows that he's kind of selfish and doesn't really look out for other people in his life. He just doesn't. He only looks out for himself. And the only time he looks out for other people, is when he gets hurt. And he just doesn't want that. Because he just really doesn't react to anything Nikki does. By like shock or anything throughout the movie. It just feels like he's always trying to get her away and not really stop the bad activity. That's the vibe I got when I was watching the movie. That's just the way he seems to be portrayed. Where it kind of is like he secretly kind of likes the attention that Nikki's giving him and all that. But that may not be true. That's just how I see it from looking at the movie. But that may be some tinfoil hat theory. The point is, Bear is just a selfish person. Because normally, if someone asked you to put them out of their misery and they were actually suffering like how Nikki was in that scene, you'd hate to do it. You'd hate to do it a lot, but you would still probably do it. You wouldn't enjoy it. I would actually be more afraid and more convinced of villainy if anyone enjoyed doing that. But you just wouldn't enjoy it. In this situation, Bear knows that Nikki isn't herself and that she's not enjoying what's happening to her. And he's offended by the fact that she doesn't want to be with him, which is kind of cruel if you ask me. Like, he knows that Nikki is not the person that he knows, and he could easily end that misery right there. But he doesn't. He just doesn't end the misery that she is clearly in. He just decides that having a relationship with her that really is based on lies and is forced as all could be is better than having her be actually happy. It is that selfish mentality where it's like, at least I'm happy in this situation even though she isn't. Like, this guy does not know the saying like happy wife, happy life or whatever. But that is not a relationship, by the way. That's just putting a bird in a cage. Bear's a bird catcher who just wants to trap Nikki for his enjoyment, which in any relationship, doesn't matter what type it is, it just isn't healthy, because having someone forcefully trapped in a relationship makes them not have an authentic self. I believe you have to be happy in a relationship in order to actually have a good relationship. But this idea of her being forced into the relationship was just something that shows how Bear kind of put this evil onto the relationship. All because of a fumble, by the way. All because of a fumble. He could have moved on and probably got with Sarah because she had interest in him. But nah, let's just force it onto Nikki because he just fumbled her. And obviously he needs to get the girl, obviously. Another example you can see when you're looking at Bear's unhealthy, sociopathic behaviors is what happens when he tries to, quote, cancel his wish. Quotes are used heavily here because he really just tries to alter it at first. He wants to alter it to better his situation because him being with Nikki or whatnot, or what people can think is Nikki, is all that matters. By the way, just to point out, nobody except for Bear and Nikki really know what's going on and what the truth is behind their relationship. So Bear is just trying to project that he's with Nikki to everyone he knows and everyone in the world, which really just kind of makes her his trophy wife in a way. Not in the typical sense, of course, just in the way that makes him be able to say, I'm her boyfriend and I'm dating her, and kind of flex on his friends that they're dating, even if he thinks some of the stunts she does are crazy, because they literally are. I believe the way that he reacts to all the stupid and crazy stuff she does is not even human. I don't believe that. When she's like peeing and pooping and going potty, waiting for him at his door, he just acts like she's a child when he comes home. He comes home, he just kind of acts like she's a kid who made a little mistake and he's there to protect her. That is a grown woman, Bear. A grown woman who should know not to do that stuff. You can't just be like, I'm disappointed, and not to do anything. If a grown woman pees and poops on your floor, you're not just like, do better next time. Why would there be a next time, first off? But she should know better. Anybody should know better. Bear doesn't want to admit that Nikki is absolutely crazy, and he made her this way. He just made her to be the psycho version that she is, and we see. Because normally, she's not like that. And even he knows that. He knows what her true self is like because they are friends. And friends know how other friends will act. And he just coddles her instead of trying to, like, cancel it. Cancel the wish. He doesn't cancel his wish or even try at first. He just wants Nikki to be less obsessive and still wants to be with her. He just can't let go, which is something that happens to people, but he just can't let go. Bear's selfishness is caused from his desire to be loved or to have someone pay attention to him. That's the same reason all the people I've seen that have said, I wish I had a girl like Nikki, say that. They don't want a girl like Nikki in the movie. They really don't look at the negatives or the ethics of it. They just look at the positives and they're like, oh, at least I'll have somebody who pays attention to me. Like, my brother in Christ, you don't need a girl like Nikki. You need self-confidence and respect at that point. You should not turn out like Bear, where he gets his friends killed because of his unwillingness to let go of the one thing he calls dear, or that he can call dear, since it's not really the Nikki he knows. It's just essentially another being that he's doing this to, but just in Nikki's body, which, you know, kind of messed up when you think about it. I was talking to a friend about this movie, right? And they said that, quote, you can't goon with Nikki because it's not actually her saying or doing anything in her body after Bear makes the wish. The only time is when she asks for a mercy killing, but that's the only time the actual Nikki comes out. And it shows that she doesn't want that. She doesn't want that lifestyle that she has. So yeah, you can't really fully like the idea of Nikki and what happens to her in the movie, because that's kind of weird overall. But in general, like when you look at it, Bear is kind of the real villain of the movie because of those reasons. And so you kind of don't want to end up like him. The music in the movie is one that sets the atmosphere. There aren't too many copyrighted songs in the movie, but the music and the sounds throughout the movie are actually what make it scary. Like during the frown scene, you know which one, it is so scary, it puts you on edge because the music and the sound always suggests Nikki is gonna do something insane. It's kind of the most off-putting thing. It helps form the movie's atmosphere and the creepiness around it, which is a really good thing about the movie. The scariness. I got the best seat in the house, in the theater. And because of that, it made me stay on the edge of my seat, and even it made me jump a few times. I won't lie, I jumped. I'm not gonna lie to you. But the music helps with that, and that's why it's actually good. But onto the numbers. It has a 4.2 out of 5 on Letterboxd, which puts it as the 449th highest ranked movie since they updated their website in their list to have up to 500 now instead of 250. Now, on IMDb, it has an 8.1 out of 10. And on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 95%. Those are pretty good numbers, considering it's an indie movie. And sometimes they don't get the best review scores. But it looks like, in general, the movie got a lot of good reviews. Since it still is in theaters, I can only say the current box office numbers, which, as I'm writing and recording this, it is $225 million against a $750,000 budget, which means it's making a lot of money, which is good to see from an indie film. It gives hope to other people making films and whatnot that they can be successful as well. You just have to make a good movie. Overall, Obsession is a good movie to show that you cannot force a relationship and you're actually in the wrong if you do the stuff that Bear does. Personally, I liked the movie. I would give it an 8.8 out of 10, and I would recommend it if you like horror or if you want a movie to watch in theaters. I would personally say you should watch it in theaters, but get the best seats. So like in the middle of the place, but not like too close to it. You can imagine what that is. But that's just what I think. That's for the best experience. But you may have a different opinion. And if you do, you can comment it down below to spread your First Amendment right. But that's about it, really. Please like and subscribe. Pretty please.